Om Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So verses 20 to 28, chapter 9. One attains what one strives for. And from 29 onwards, which we'll also be starting today, dedicated effort leads the seeker, even the unrighteous, to self-realization. So it's like understanding what these terms mean. We often condemn one person to another, but hearing saying even the unrighteous will get to realization. So sometimes it's just to examine for yourself what this is, so you know where you're at, without being too harsh upon yourself, but really realizing nothing in the spiritual path is right or wrong. It's actually what your direction is, what you're prepared to do, which makes it so. And mostly it boils down to your own self-effort and discipline on the higher values of life. So we left off last week, I think on 27, as it were. And 27, let's actually, I'm just remembering, did we complete 27 or did we?
We didn't. We completed 26 and we talked a little bit about 27.
Okay, so let's just recap it. So we didn't read 27. That's okay. So 27 is, let's have the chant, in fact. Okay.
Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva madarpanam.
Nishi, if you could read the rest.
Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give, whatever austerity you practice, O Kundeya, do that as an offering to me.
Mm-hmm. So talking again about a devotional person, we all have to cultivate that devotion, that bhakti in us, whether we're a jnani, a karma yogi, a person of action, a person of knowledge. We all need that devotion to oil our spirit, makes us human. And the other way around, if you're a bhakta, you need that action and you need that knowledge. And if you're a karma yogi, you need that knowledge to back your action and that emotion to refine it. Maybe we're predominantly one or the other. So that one decides and goes on that path full blast. But here in this, he's putting forward in terms of that element of bhakti and self-effort. So what have you got to do? Yat juhoshi, yat karoshi, yat dadashi, yat So let's see. Yet karoshi. So whatever you eat, offer. Let's actually read the verse, Nishi.
Verse 26 mentions the importance of devotion and effort to reach God.
Let's just read the verse itself.
Sorry.
Whatever you do.
Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give, whatever austerity you practice, O Konthea, do that as an offering to me.
Mm-hmm. So when you see this, immediately you think, whatever you do, ablate it to the self, ablate it to me, the self. That's what's being asked. So it's helping you move your action from what? What's it inferring? Because I think if we talked about it last week, what's it inferring? Nishi.
Is it saying bring divinity into every action?
Certainly. And so what does that mean?
Every action you do should be offered to the higher, to Krishna.
Yes, Krishna, self, Atman, Brahman, whatever you want to call it. So what does that mean? What type of action is it? What type of offering is it? What does it implicitly infer? Guru?
Or is it the devotion? The aspect of devotion, on every action, you probably have that sense of devotion.
So what is devotion? You're right. You're correct. That's what it is. So if we break it down, Ash, you had your hand.
I think Jyoti had it.
Okay.
Ash, you go.
I was going to just say what Guru had said. It's something higher, devotion, something beyond yourself.
Yes. Jyoti, add to it.
I was going to say that and say it's selfless.
Yes. So all in all, devotion relates with that feeling of identification to something higher. And it can't be with self-interest. It's got to be unselfish, selfless. So that's what one always remembers. So it's not what you want for your own personal gain. It's for that whole totality, that self, thine, not mine. That's what one needs to cultivate. So whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give, whatever you're about to do, offer it up to something bigger. Don't think of offering it to yourself. Do it for a bigger cause. So, karyam karma, just do what you're obliged to do. Figure out what your obligations are and do that. Don't keep it to your own little circle or family. It's got to expand, mentally expand, so you get to those universal values and practices. Everything in nature offers you without you doing anything. It gives you everything. Right now, the temperature is maintained. The sun is out, at least in my part of the world, it's out. It's out anyway, even when it's not there. That's the irony. It's always there. So we have oxygen. We have so many blessings. So we ourselves makes whatever we do, just do it because we ought to. Let's read it. Ash.
Just wanted to share something, if that's okay. I think it's sort of related to this in that I was out yesterday doing some shopping, and the store owner, or the stall owner we went to, he spent some time with us going through stuff, and he, you know, we were trying to bargain things down and so forth, but he kept his calm with us. We were there quite some time, and what I noticed was, in between talking to us, he was constantly saying his prayer, like his Satnam or something like that, Vaheguru, in between talking to us, but he kept this calmness within himself, and this sort of smile. And, you know, we were there so long that we might have irritated him at some point, because we weren't buying until the end. So I'm just wondering, in that he kept something higher in his mindset, in his thoughts, maybe, whilst engaging with us.
Don't know.
You keep that sort of peace or calmness within him.
Maybe. We
Yeah.
don't know.
It-
You have to think about what you do. You don't know what's going on in him. He might be using that for his business, or he might be pure and using it for a different reason. We don't know. But I take your point. So whatever you do with focus, be it for a limited goal or ultimate, bigger picture, unselfishly, selflessly, if you get your focus, you'll get what you want, because you put in the effort. So here's saying, put in the effort to the self. Put in the effort to get the self, that devotion. So maybe he had the devotion to the self, or maybe he had the devotion to his business. We don't know. Maybe he just wanted to, he knows the customer so well. Idiots bartering. Know how to handle it. The best barter is, you know, the story of Swamiji. Anybody heard that story on anything? Oh, I've seen it millions of times with Swamiji, and it cultivates it in yourself. Does anybody know that story about the fan? Or anywhere, in fact. It starts in India, or Indians especially have a habit of bartering. So he goes into the shop to buy a fan. Actually, I can give you many examples he's talked about, but and the examples of what he's done, I can see that. People get confused. So they start by seemingly bartering the price. But then, you know, the shopkeeper's getting worried, you know, okay. They don't say the price. So they ask for the fan. How much is the fan? And the shopkeeper, I don't know how much, say it was a couple of thousand rupees. And they keep quiet. And the shopkeeper's thinking, and they walk away. And the shopkeeper's thinking, oh, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was too much. They're going, I won't get the first sale of the day. So he chases them to bring them back, say, no, I'll give you this much. I'll give it you for 2,500. Then Swamiji goes, gives the girls much more than that. The shopkeeper's bemused. I was giving them less. Why did they give me more? So when you're bartering is not to take something from somebody, but actually give something. Thine will be done, not mine. Not mine. If you're going to barter, give something more. Don't take something. So the shopkeeper's a good businessman. Yeah, you always think you're getting a raw deal. I'll take something. I got a good bargain. For God's sake, the best bargain is when you give, not take. Who knows what was in his mind? We don't know. Nice to bring it up. But remember, life's to give. So whatever you do, offer it up to the highest. These are just things to make you think. Good you brought it up, Ash. It makes us all think. You know, it makes us all think what we're doing. Today we love a bargain and we give more. That's the bargain. We understand. We can give more. That's the real pleasure. Yet Jehoshi, yet Dadasi, yet Yajna Jehoshi Yadasiyat. So let's read it.
Verse 26 mentions the importance of devotion and effort to reach God. This verse makes reference to the devotional aspect of spiritual practice. The next verse speaks of effort and action. Yat means which, whatever. The verse states, whatever you do or refrain from doing, whatever you eat, offer or give, all these seem to cover the range of human activities. Krishna asks Kunteya, Arjuna, to oblate them all to him, to the Supreme Self, Atman Brahman, to maintain a constant and unswerving thought of the Self and direct all physical, mental, and intellectual activities to the attainment of self-realization. Spiritual practitioners have a general tendency to seek only limited goals short of self-realization. They practice karma yoga, path of action, to gain some material ends. Others pursue bhakti yoga, path of devotion, to attain mental peace and solace. Yet others follow jnana yoga, path of knowledge, to find intellectual satisfaction. Few aspire to discover the self within. Using pronoun me to mean the self, Krishna appeals to mankind to devote, to dedicate all their activities to the attainment of the Supreme Self.
So, everything, ablate to the higher. Even if you want to bargain, ablate it to the higher. There's one place that you can take when you ablate it to the higher. And if your taking encourages the others to give karma, then you should take. So if a child's selfish, you encourage it to share, in which case you've got to take from it. You ablate it to the higher. You don't actually want it. It's just, you see, for its benefit, you take from it. That's the time you can take. Otherwise, every other place, it's, if the sun for 1 minute takes from you, if the oxygen given for 1 minute decides, I'm not giving you, because you're not paying my price, you will be in trouble. It's a giver. It never says that. So let us ablate everything to truth. Then we become truth-like. That's the beauty. From wherever you're at. Let's go. Tim.
Is this verse suggesting that we all tend to pursue one of these three forms that we find easiest? that we have to challenge ourselves and do the forms that are not easy to us, or is that not what it's saying?
No, it's whatever your mental makeup is. If you're more of a thinker or more of a karma yogi or a bhakta, you'll do that naturally. But in each one of them, whether you're a jnani, you still have to have that to make yourself a jnani in its true sense. You will act. You can't just sit and do nothing. The desires that you have, you will act in terms of backing it with knowledge, but you will act in terms of karma. And in terms of devotion, you have to have that emotional refinement. So a jnani has to refine their emotions. So they pursue bhakti in that sense. But it's normally backed by knowledge. They understand why they're doing it, whereas a bhakta may not. So this verse appeals to all in different ways. You'll do accordingly. So it's not what's easy, it's just what's your nature. You might actually have a nature, it's not an easy path to pursue being a jnani. That's taking that spiritual knowledge, reflect. But at the same time, if that's your nature, that's what you've got to do. So whichever your predominance is, that's what you go with. It's not suggesting you go with the easy one. You'll get, if that's the tendency, it'll probably be easier for you. But even if you know your inclination is that way, it's not easy, you keep going with it. The other thing is we're all a combination of emotions. We all have desires, so we've got to act on them. And we need knowledge to really do it well. So even the bhakta needs knowledge to really pursue their devotion to the utmost, to understand it, so nobody can pull the rug from out of it. Very few bhaktas go to the very end where they don't need to have knowledge. They can just follow a guru, a master, or a scripture. Somewhere they need something to have that understanding, even if it's limited comparatively to a jnani. Don't know if that makes sense. So we're all a combination. So we've all got to do a bit of, the predominance might be as a jnani knowledge, but we still, to the extent our nature requires and our desires require, we've got to pursue action and devotion. It's just done with different approaches. Does that make sense?
Yes, so in this class, we're now up to chapter 9. When we reach chapter 18, will we find the self, or do we have to do something else?
It's not a matter of chapters. You better start looking for it now. I wouldn't wait till chapter 18. You may have got nothing but a lot of literature, flowery literature, and gone nowhere. Or you may, one verse you come across and it inspires you and you get onto your actions about what your desires are about. You get on to pursuing them, fulfilling them, offering them up to something bigger. Because you understand this is key to why you exist. Everybody's choice. Nothing to do. You could do 100 Gitas. You could do every scripture. Lots of people are spiritual tourists that go from one teacher or scripture to another. They go from all the different religions. Right, I've done that for 6 months. Now do that for 6 months. If you get to the core values, you'll stop being stop taking in volumes and volumes of literature. You'll get to the core values and start practicing them. Because the truths are not different. It doesn't really matter where you get them from. Truth is truth. With the 18th chapter or the 2nd chapter, I get it. Start to practice. So will you get the self? If you put in all the effort, this is just your catalyst to delve within. Makes sense? Hopefully. So if you're hoping for the self on the 18th chapter, you've got to have done the commensurate effort prior to it. Guru, Tim, do you have anything?
Thank you, Guru's question.
Guru.
Thank you. Paulji, pardon me, I might need some help from you to understand the perspective of the story that you just narrated about the barter system of the fan, the example of a fan. I'm just trying to figure out what's the perspective. I understand in a barter you wouldn't really want to take anything. But then is it really fair to give more than the fair share in a barter system? Because would that not really encourage the other party to expect that as a default with the next customer, for example? Is it not really, in that sense, is it not unfair that you're trying to kind of set the higher expectation with the vendor, so that for the next customer, he probably, the vendor would expect a 2,500 because the previous customer did pay. So in that sense, what is the nobility really in paying more?
Life is to give, not to take. If you don't do that, you have to suffer it. Simple. I'll give you another example, which I experience with Swamiji regularly. We drive from Pune or Mumbai on the highway to the academy. And as you come off the exit, there's often fruit vendors. And you see people stop in their cars. And it's a hot, sunny day, the vendors sitting there on a cloth, selling and bartering fruits to the person who's probably in their murk. They're bartering with the fruit vendor for 10, 20 rupees. Now, if you just give them, they're sitting there all day. What's 10, 20 rupees that you barter? It gives you your blood pressure. It gives you your anxiety. It gives you your stress. But what happens when you give a little more? You have a smile on your face. You're relaxed. They're relaxed. Everybody's happy. They're not struggling. It's a sense of proportion you must use. If you're ever unsure, give more. If you have the attitude of, I've set the bar for another person, let it be set higher. Life's to give. If you are selfish like that, you have to suffer. So I know whenever we would go past that vendor, any vendor, the window goes down, the money comes out of the pouch. The vendor's to ask us, what do we want? We'll give him the money, and then he's asking us, the window goes up and we drive off. Many, many times I've seen that. I could give you hundreds of examples. If you don't do that, you have to suffer in life. If you don't have an attitude of serving and giving, because you think somebody else's expectation, whoa, what will happen in the market? As long as you have that self-interest, or you think that somebody else shouldn't have, you are in trouble. Life is to give. If you want a smile on your face and to live well and relaxed, everybody has a capacity to give, whether they got something in the pocket or nothing in the pocket. Everybody has a capacity. And if you don't do it, you suffer stress. That's the bottom line. Yeah? Don't think about it any other way. Oh, then the prices will go high. Then, well, if the price goes high, then you make sure you compensate. You'll be better off. You won't have the stress of life. It's nothing to do with the quantum, it's to do with the mindset. If you cannot give, you will suffer. That's the law. That's the law. Oblate it all to the self. That's the law. You cannot give to your neighbor or person who you're doing business with. How can you give it to the self? This is the gradation. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Parulji. I think my only dilemma was, is it a universal statement, or do the conditions apply for
Yes.
this?
Yes, it's universal. You have to be intelligent, and there's mentally times where you take because you're giving. This is when we will do the giving course. You come on that. You will understand it fully. There's different grades of how you do it. But your job in life, if you want to spiritually evolve, you have to give. It's not what I can get out. The culture is falling apart because what can I get out of you? Everybody's miserable. What can I take from you? Once you put back to something, you have a smile on your face, you're relaxed. You go on to the next thing. You enjoy life. You become attractive in everything. It's a mental attitude. It's not passive. It's more complicated than that. But the principle is you have to give. If you don't keep that, your spiritual growth will be stunted. If you take and don't give for whatever your warped principle is, you are in trouble. Unless you're taking to educate people to share, and there's a higher cause that needs to be cultivated. That's the only time you can take. Make sense? All of you, hear it clear. Life is to give, not to take. Ablate it to the higher. Start with being unselfish, then selfless. You have to learn the principles of giving to do this intelligently. Understand what you're saying, Guru. Once you get that intelligence, that is key to your spiritual evolution. Everything which is in nature gives. We don't pay for any of it. We're so self-centeredly we want to take so that it doesn't function properly. Then when we suffer, we're complaining. Life is to give. If we take nothing away from this class, just take that attitude. So you might say, well, should I do it? Then you've got to be intelligent, but you have to give if you want to grow. How are you going to identify with the other person if you don't have that attitude or spirit of giving? It's all mine and I. What can I get out of it? If you do that, your ego grows and you isolate yourself. You'll be individually, materially endowed, and a few people around you who follow you. So you want something from them, they want something from you. But the minute that goes, you're finished. Nothing, no backbone to stand on. Gotta be giving. Everybody has something to give. Tim.
If I were to rephrase Guru's question in a different way, say Russia wants Ukraine. Should we give Ukraine to Russia? Because then it affects Poland and all the Baltic states.
The principle is life is to give. If there's an aggressor, I do not know the facts and the history of Russia and Ukraine. It's not our business to get into the politics of what is happening there. But the principle remains. If you're intelligent, remember, giving doesn't necessarily mean you give everything unintelligently. That's why I say you've got to come on the giving course when we do it. It's smart. You have to understand how to do it. But the attitude has got to be giving. The minute we want to take for our own interest, we are in trouble. Globally. And that's why we are in trouble. Everybody wants to take. There's no comprehension or understanding. of working in harmony. There's so little internal development that we have to war our internal conflicts outwardly. So I don't know the facts, but we just have to look around of what's happening and the disharmony. The minute you give in the right, intelligent fashion, which we're not going into, which we will, you can come, then you discover how, why, what. So it's not straightforward when we don't have all the facts. I understand what you're saying, but just keep it in the back of your mind. This is what you've got to analyze, assess. When should I? When do I not? On what basis? What brings harmony to the society? Is you're identifying with the truth. And the truth isn't passive. It's an assertion, a negation of all that doesn't hold that universality. Something which holds it. It's intelligent. If anybody delves into that, there won't be these wars. We can't get into the things that we don't know all the facts about. Everything is meticulously a cause and effect. We don't know why. You make sure you put in the right causes so your effects come out well. Come on the giving course. We should be having it in May, June, something like that.
Well, on a personal level, Parulji, I think my experience is, I want to share it, right? I think it's about the restaurants itself. For example, if I were to go to a 5-star restaurant, right, I don't feel like paying a huge tip because for some reason I have a notion that probably either people who work in 5-star restaurant are self-sufficient, they don't really live with your tip. Whereas I go to an average restaurant or a small eatery in India, I would be more than happy to kind of, pay much more tip. Now, this is my notion that a 5-star restaurant employees probably are self-sufficient and they might not really need that additional tip. That might be my notion. But then I always see that, a small eatery, when I probably pay a 20%, 30% tip, they're very happy. So I know for a fact that it probably makes a change in their life in some other way, at least on the day. So is that sort of differentiation in giving, is that right or wrong? Should I be guilty that I have that notion?
If your conscience pricks, yes. And yes, your job is to give. A broke mindset, a poor mindset is one which doesn't give wherever you go. If you have all the money in the world, you won't mind giving at the 5-star hotel because you will see it from a different perspective. You make yourself bigger by giving to the person who you can see needs it, but you feel that you need it more than the person who's serving you in the 5-star restaurant. So your mentality, not yours, generally, it's a broke mentality. It's a mentality which is like you may have it in your pocket, but you're broke in your mindset. Yeah,
I get it.
You're measuring quantum. To get it? Everybody get it? It's good analogies bring up. But this is what we do.
Because I keep hearing this concept of apatra dhana. I mean, you would know this, Parulji, right? So even when you're giving, it has to go to the right people. This is a concept that I keep hearing, since my childhood. So I don't know whether that itself.
Correct, but don't misguide it by not giving. You get the facts. When you raise yourself, the facts come to you. When you keep yourself with a broke mindset, everything which you see where you're aspiring for, you can't afford. It's smart mindset. It's not the quantum in your pocket that makes you rich. It's the mindset. You may have and may not have. It's a mindset. When you're frugal, you always have more in your pocket to give. May have lots in your pocket and you can't give. It makes you pauper. Makes sense. Everybody hear it. We got a lesson on giving here today. It's poignant because we all behave in certain ways. You've got to analyze it a bit more. You think it's better one place or the other. I understand you are right. Where you can see it obviously, where you can't, educate yourself with a bigger mindset. Ash, it's okay. Makes sense.
I was just going to say, I think you've just said it, it's also the attitude that you give with, whether you give because everybody else is giving, so you feel you should give, or you give because of there's something arises within you. Yeah, it's the attitude, or you give because someone's given and I'm going to give a bit more to show that I'm more than them. Do you see what I mean? There's an attitude. I mean, I'm interested in the giving course that you just said, but there's different levels of how you give as to what it means spiritually.
Material, you give materially, you give physically, you give emotionally, you give intellectually, you give spiritually. Spiritual needs to be backed by all of those. Yeah. It's a mental attitude that you can. Does the sun decide that's a villain, I better not give them any warmth? Gives it. When one can come up to the level of that. This is what it's saying. Everything ablated to something high. Even if you're doing something wrong, ablate it somewhere high. Slowly one changes the mindset of, oh, I don't need to do that in that way. Let's do it in a better way. Have better attitude. You want to grow, you've got to give. If you're not giving, check it. Where's your growth? It's smart. That's what we don't know yet. It's not passive. It's not emotional. It's not physical. There's a smart spiritual offering, which is one's got to learn. The minute you do that, you'll be peaceful. Gotta give. Let's go. 28. Everybody okay?
शुभाशुभफलैरेवम् मोक्षसे कर्मबन्धनैः सन्न्यासयोगयुक्तात्मा विमुक्तो मामुपैष्यसि.
Sam, if you could read the verse.
Verse 28. Thus you shall be freed from the bonds of actions bearing good and evil results, seeking union by Sannyasayoga, yoga of renunciation. Liberated, you shall come to me.
So he's talking about somebody who's gone far down the path, it's not at the beginning. So Evam is following the verse past 27, ablate everything to the self. Dedicate all to Brahman, the totality, the self. That frees you. Offer it up, frees you. So you get liberated from your bonds to action, that desire-ridden activity of when you do actions with an expectation, you get, even if it's noble, you get punya. Or if you do something negative, you get papa, the negative effects. Punya, the positive heavenly effects. You reap the rewards. So vasana is culminating because of desire-ridden actions. Punya, papa. So dedicate those actions. Renounce them to something higher. Sannyasayoga, renunciation. So it's a very smart concept here. You pick up the higher and the lower falls away. You can remember this. Pitch up the higher, the lower falls away. So sannyasa yoga is having that objectivity, that dispassionate passion, that renunciation. So you pitch up the higher. You get attached to the higher value. You detach from the lower. Sannyasa, attached to the higher. Yoga, joining. You drop that lower. Naturally, you can't drop the lower and pitch up something higher. That's why it doesn't work if you have an addiction to anything, you can't drop it. You've got to have something higher than the lower falls away. So this is what it's talking about. So slowly, slowly, you refine all your desires by this process. Sannyasa yoga. It frees you up, liberates you. Slowly you get to the self. So a dispassionate passion, the objective, when you focus on your obligations. There's no like or dislike. You're objective to it. Yeah, you enjoy it. Yeah, maybe not something that you like too much, but you have a neutral perspective on it. You can step back, there's elbow room. Let's read it.
Verse 26 indicated devotion and effort as two essential requirements for self-realization. Verse 27 spoke about the devotional aspect, whereas this verse refers to the type of effort necessary to reach the goal. Actions bind you because of the motives attached to them. Actions backed by good motives yield good results, while those propelled by evil motives produce evil results. Thus you become bound, affected by your actions. But when you direct your actions towards the self, when you practice union with self by renouncing both good and bad motives, you will reach the self, me, says Krishna. You will be free from the residual effects of your actions. You become liberated from the bonds of action. Sannyasa yoga literally means union of renunciation, a compound word comprising two words with opposite meanings. Sannyasa means renunciation, yoga means union. Sannyasa yoga, therefore, has an interesting connotation based on a fundamental law of life. Detachment is not possible without attachment. You must attach yourself to the higher before you detach from the lower. Like climbing a ladder, you fix your foot firmly on the higher rung before you release the other foot from the lower rung. For instance, a child will not discard his tricycle until he grows up and identifies with a motorcycle. Likewise, you must study, contemplate, and identify with the Supreme Self to liberate yourself from the thraldom of mundane activities. Get attached to Brahman to get detached from the world.
Get attached to the self. Everything you get a perspective. So if we're going to take away anything from today, what's the takeaway? Got a few minutes. Vinda, Santosh, come on. I'll come back to you. Sam, you were going to say
Yes,
something.
just like you said, to whatever you do, that you offer it to the self. And also, I found the giving talk very interesting.
So what's the takeaway? Whatever you do, you go for the self.
Yeah. Try it.
Good. What else?
It's keeping that mindset of how can I give rather than take.
Jyoti.
Just to add to Ash, to give unselfishly. Yeah.
Nishi.
That life is to give. I found it very interesting because what I've learned over the last however many years is the pleasure is actually in the giving and not the receiving. Whereas when I was younger, it was all about getting whatever presents or whatever I could. That's where I thought the pleasure lay. But now it's very different. It's always in the giving, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Good. Anybody else? Tim.
You have to let go of karma, bhakti, jnani to reach the self.
Mm-hmm.
Finally.
Good. When can you let go of karma, bhakti, jnana? When is that possible?
When you've glimpsed the self, so you're attaching yourself to something higher.
Mm-hmm. Technically correct. So what does that mean? Perhaps you've got to do enough of karma, bhakti, jnanam to naturally be pitching up there. So that falls away. Can't just renounce your karma bhakti because it won't work. Can't hold your mind there. It's got to be a very natural process. You can't keep your mind still, hold it. means you've not done enough karma, bhakti, jnana to focus on yourself. You've got to put in the efforts. In that, speak. Good. There you go.
Thank you.